people think of Tahrik-e-Jadid as a scheme only for the propagation of Islam, verbal propagation of Islam. It's not. It's primarily to relieve the human race, the humankind, from all sorts of misery that they face. You see that it's an ideological, a philosophical, a spiritual, and a financial scheme as well. So it's a combination which was above and beyond all worldly schemes, be it Bolshevism, be it socialism, be it communism, be it fascism, be it Nazism, be it Francoism, be it whatever. That is what Tahrik-e-Jadid is. Tahrik-e-Jadid is a practical reply to our opponents. It is at that time that when the opponents said to the Ahmadiyya community or to the Ahmadis that we'll make sure that we eradicate you, we erase you from the face of the earth, or at least from Qadian, that is when this scheme is launched, which is all about spreading the message of Islam to all corners of the earth.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Great to have you here again.
Thank you very much.
Today's topic is quite interesting in the sense that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a thriving community, but it's also a persecuted community. There are also many allegations raised against this community. Some of those allegations are usually geared towards the financial aspect of the community itself. It has many different types of donations that its members are required to partake in. The members see it as a blessed endeavor. The opponents, not so much, obviously. But in any case, one of these schemes is called the Tahrik-e-Jadid scheme. We are close towards the end of the year for the Tahrik-e-Jadid scheme. But just for our viewers and any Ahmadi in general who isn't as well versed with it as they can be, what is Tahrik-e-Jadid?
Right. Jazakumullah, thank you, Daniel. And it's I think it's really important you mentioned that we're approaching the end of the year of Tahrik-e-Jadid, and as soon people will start receiving telephone calls from their secretaries of Tahrik-e-Jadid from their local halqa, them being reminded of their pledges and what they pledged to contribute and how much of it has been paid, how much of it is remaining, etc. So I think it's a good time we discuss this. And it's also very good you mentioned the financial aspect, because with the passage of time, certain things, not only the opponents, but even some of the people who are part of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, they might just get to see Tahrik-e-Jadid, a scheme like Tahrik-e-Jadid, to be only a financial scheme, when it actually isn't. And when we look into the history and the genesis of Tahrik-e-Jadid, how it actually came about, that's very interesting. I mean, that is, if you look into that, you see that it's an ideological, a philosophical, a spiritual, and a financial scheme as well. So it's a combination. So it's not just a financial scheme. Yes, that is a part of it, but it's not just the whole of it. And most of the times we say that it started in 1934. When I say that, I always have to take a double take that did it start in 1934, actually, because the founder, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiyallahu anhu, the second caliph, he saw it to have started many years before. He traced it back to 1905 with the launch of the scheme called the Will, Al-Wasiyah, by the founder of the Ahmadiyya community, as Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam.
Yes.
He traced the roots back to then. And again, when I say the founder, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, of the scheme, I again have to basically think twice before I say that. Because he himself said, I haven't launched this scheme. I had absolutely nothing like that in my mind. It's one fine day that Allah the Almighty installed it in my heart. And the way he announced it, when he grasped what he had, what the inspiration that he had for a grand scheme. And we'll come to that, what the grand scheme was and what Tahrik-e-Jadid is all about. But before he announced it, I find it so thrilling, when I imagine him delivering a Friday sermon in Masjid Aqsa in Qadian and telling the congregation sitting before him that I have a grand scheme to announce, but I will not do that today. I want all of you to go back and make sure that you cleanse your hearts of any grudges, any grievances that you might hold against your fellows. So I want you to come back next Friday with a very clean heart, because the scheme that has been installed on my heart and that I am going to announce is not one that I would just give it out to anyone and everyone. I really want the right type of audience to actually grasp what Tahrik-e-Jadid is all about, this new scheme that I'm going to launch. So he waited that whole week. And then he told them why I wanted you to do all of this and cleanse your hearts and purify your hearts and then come back is because this scheme will first of all require a purity of heart. Because only a pure heart and a clean heart can understand what it is all about.
Mm.
And then he launched the Tahrik-e-Jadid, which he said, because this is happening in 1934, we must remember. So it's the interwar period, we must remember. And he said, at this moment, the world is grappling with many, many ideas of reform in the human society.
Mm.
And different political ideologies are trying it their way. Different philosophical schools of thought are trying it their way.
Yeah.
And everyone has got their own opinion. Different religions have tried.
Yeah.
And nothing seems to be working.
Yeah, you had communism, you had Nazism, fascism.
They're all
popping up everywhere. Yeah. Everyone was trying. Yeah.
And these movements were flourishing.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look back at that time when Tahrik-e-Jadid was launched, it was the time, I wouldn't say when all of this was coming. I mean, Bolshevism was actually the main movement which basically got it all going.
Mm.
Because with that, the main problem that Bolshevism or the Russian Revolution that came about through Lenin and his accomplices was all about, I mean, it was a revolt against the bourgeois, as they called them, the elite class.
Mm.
The division and the gulf between the rich and the poor, and the exploitation of the rich by the rich of the poor. And they said this gulf is just widening. It was a crack and it's just widening and widening and widening, and something needs to be done about it. That is where it all started. And it turned into an international, it knew no borders. So it turned into it had the potential of turning, I would say, into an international movement. And that, as a reaction, is when we see the movements like fascism and Nazism and Francoism in Spain, and Mussolini's fascism as well in Italy, them popping up, because that was a pushback, an attempt to push back Bolshevism or communism, so to speak. So it's in that milieu, they had gained momentum. They started post-war, most of them, and they had gained momentum by the early 1930s.
Yeah.
So that is when Tahrik-e-Jadid, that is when the genesis of Tahrik-e-Jadid actually happens, and it comes into being. And the founder, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiallahu anhu, the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya community, he very clearly mentioned that Tahrik-e-Jadid, although I'm announcing it now as a new scheme, is actually not a new scheme as such. It has its roots in Al-Wasiyat, because in 1905, the founder of the Ahmadiyya community was given an inspiration by Allah the Almighty to launch a scheme which was spiritual and financial at the same time. And it was aimed at alleviating the misery of the human race. And the purposes that he listed out for the funds that were to be collected through the Al-Wasiyah scheme, were not only, because as generally seen, you talk of opponents, they say, oh, it's actually like they sell a grave and Ahmadis buy a grave. It isn't that. No, it's a financial contribution which goes into a whole scheme. And that had so many objectives, and one of which was to take care of the poor people and to ensure that no one slept hungry. I'm paraphrasing. And that no one was without a roof. And that no one was without any basic amenities. That is why money had to be contributed by the more affluent to a pool, a central pool, managed by the community, and then distributed out to the underprivileged people. I don't like to call them poor people, the underprivileged people, let's say. So, Tahrik-e-Jadid comes at a time when the Al-Wasiya scheme is still not in full swing. That is what Hazrat Muslim Maud, as Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiyallahu anhu said. He said, because that is going to take a lot of time, because that involves, real estate. And then you have, if you own real estate and you are a Musi or part of the Al-Wasiya scheme, you have to contribute even, part of from the worth and value of your property, etc., etc. So that's going to take a long time. In the meantime, while we wait for the will to come into full swing, we have Tahrik-e-Jadid here, which is not only, and again, I paraphrase his words, but he said most of the times people think of Tahrik-e-Jadid as a scheme only for the propagation of Islam, verbal propagation of Islam. It's not. It's primarily to relieve the human race, the humankind, from all sorts of misery that they face. And one of those miseries is that they've been left devoid of faith and religion, because in the process, with the surge of Bolshevism, and then with the rising of all of these reactionary movements as fascism and Francoism and whatnot and Nazism, religion actually just got taken out of the equation. It just flew out of the window, because that was seen as a threat as well. That is why we see, what Hitler did to the Jews. That is where that religion and racial, all of that element comes in. So they wanted Roman Catholicism, like Hitler wouldn't tolerate Roman Catholicism in Germany. So the persecution was not only against Jews, but against the Roman Catholics as well. Right? So that was a pushback. So religion was flying out of the window. So religion is one aspect of Tahrik-e-Jadid. But there are others, the main purpose where the finances come in is because there has to be a way where the rich or the more affluent are willingly contributing towards a scheme which is in place to then push it out into the areas where it's actually required. It's for one of those areas is the propagation of Islam. Yes. That is how I see Tahrik-e-Jadid, and that is how I think we can understand the true meaning behind it.
Okay, so in a way, though, to maybe an outsider or even general Ahmadis, it might seem like this is another form of donations amongst many other form of donations for potentially the same reason, the same outcome for the alleviation of mankind. What's the need for another one where we already have, to start off, we already have zakat?
Yes.
Right? Isn't the purpose kind of overlapping?
Yeah. Now again, going back to the vision of Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiyallahu anhu, Al-Muslih al-Maud, he's particularly mentioned this point actually. He said there will be such allegations from our opponents and from the opponents of Islam as well, that when zakat is in place, it's very Quranic. I mean, of course, it is Quranic. And then there is an example from the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet ﷺ that zakat was there, zakat was collected, zakat was used for many purposes. But is that the only form of financial sacrifice that Allah the Almighty instructed? And is that the only form of financial sacrifice that was practiced by the Holy Prophet ﷺ? And he has proved from the Holy Quran that it isn't. Where the Holy Quran says, Nanfiqu fi sabilillah, spend in the way of Allah. And do not cast yourself into ruin with your own hands, which means that not doing it is casting yourself into ruins. And Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiyallahu anhu saw it as that if that is obligatory contributions, financial contributions that you make, i.e. zakat, in that time. And the same verse goes on to say, wa ahsinu, do good. Inna Allaha yuhibbul muhsinin. Allah loves those who do good deeds in the way of Allah.
The good doers.
The good doers. So that is where voluntary contribution comes in. And then he proved it through real life examples. He said, can zakat, because the Not everyone is eligible to pay zakat.
Yeah.
It's a very, very small minority. Even today, if you look at most of the Muslim world, how many of them are actually eligible to pay zakat?
Yeah.
Sahib-e-nisab, as you call them.
Mm.
Very little.
Yeah.
Very few. So would that be sufficient for the running of the affairs of Islam, which we believe as Muslims that is going to be the dominant religion of the world? So when it is going to be the dominant religion of the world, would zakat suffice to run all the affairs? No, it won't. You will have to have other schemes in place where people are contributing towards it. Going back to the history of Tahrik-e-Jadid and going back to the opponents.
Mm.
I know it's one of their favorite allegations. Oh, there's so many chandas and so many financial schemes for financial contribution, financial donation, and all of that. So why all of that? Tahrik-e-Jadid was launched at a time when Hazrat Muslim Maud himself says that it seemed as if it had been cornered and it had been pinned down by all sorts of forces. Not only our core religionist Muslim opponents, but the British government had also joined hands with them and were very supportive of them. They had seen that the opponents of the Ahmadiyya community were in majority. So they allowed the Ahrar, as they were called, the main representative body of the opponents, Muslim opponents of Ahmadi Muslims, to actually station themselves in Qadian and gave them protection as well. And they had come there with the claim that we will leave when we make sure that we have left Ahmadiyyat or Qadianiyat, as they call it, or Mirzaiyat, as they call it, using it as a derogatory term. But when we ensure that we have annihilated it, we've finished it. Now, on the other hand, you had the Ahmadis asking permission of their Imam, their leader, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Raziyallahu Anhu, shall we retaliate? And he said, no, we're not going to retaliate. Then what are we going to do? They're here, they're walking around, their mobs are walking around the streets of Qadian, right? Using all sorts of, derogatory slogans and obnoxious language and all of that, and they're creating havoc in our town, in our city.
Yeah.
And we're not going to retaliate. If we're not going to react, what are we going to do and when? And it is at that time that when the opponent said to the Ahmadiyya community or to the Ahmadis that we'll make sure that we eradicate you, we erase you from the face of the earth, or at least from Qadian, that is when this scheme is launched, which is all about spreading the message of Islam to all corners of the earth. That was the main ethos of the scheme called Tahrik-e-Jadid. Do what you want to us here in Qadian. Yes, we are a small community. Yes, you want to annihilate us. Yes, you want to wipe us off the face of the earth. Try. On the other hand, I've been told by God, says the head of the Ahmadiyya community, I've been told by God that He's got a bigger plan for us. So we will just reach out. We'll spread. We won't only just remain in Qadian. So do what you want, do what you can, and let's see who wins. And it is at such a challenging time when the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has been cornered from all angles and has been pinned down and is kind of, apparently from the worldly point of view, it's been paralyzed, that more and more missions start to open. That is when the founder of the Tahrik-e-Jadid, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, God be pleased with him, that is when he said, we can't do this without your financial contribution. And I need 27,000 rupees I think it was 11,000 to start with. And I need contributions. And it was a whole scheme. I mean, we can't go into the whole detail of that. We just look at the financial side, because that is where the allegation actually lies.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see that we're not spending more than we need. We'll have to see that we are actually caring and we actually understand the cause of the promised Messiah alayhi salam, and we actually understand the cause of spreading the message of Islam to the corners of the. We feel the pain for it. We take it as our mission and then contribute towards it. And when people started contributing, it was way more than he had asked. So much so that the same Ahrar who had been vandalizing property in Qadian and going around the streets and all of that, I would say the forefathers of our opponents, they too confess to the fact that yes, we have ideological and religious differences with Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, but we must acknowledge and accept the fact and admit that he asks his community for 11,000 rupees and they end up donating 100,000 rupees. He asks for 27,000 and they end up donating 400,000 rupees. We have nothing like that. We do not have a force like that. And Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, he very clearly stated, he said, this is the pattern of Islam. This is how Islam asks for financial contribution. Yeah. We are not going to follow the Bolshevik movement. We are not going to follow the model of fascism. We're not going to follow the model of Francoism. But we're not going to follow any of these models because such models and such movements, they get their people to pay through their nose. So we're not going to do that. So the scheme he launched was, and the opponents even understood it at that time because everything was publicized. Everything was in the papers, in Al-Fazl and even the outside media that was covering it. That the founder of Tahrik-e-Jadid and Khilafat to this day, they don't force anyone. They said, this is the scheme. You can contribute to it what you want. How so much ever you can. Right? Mm-hmm. When it started, Hazrat Mustafa Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, he said, you need to write to all members of the community. And then sometimes they don't really get it in the post. Write to them one more time as a reminder. Then don't remind them. Because whoever wants to contribute is welcome. Mm. Who does not want to contribute, I do not want their contributions. Mm-hmm. So that was the way it started. He wanted it to be a voluntary contribution. It is a voluntary contribution up to this day, and it remains a voluntary contribution. Every single person paying even a single penny towards Tahrik-e-Jadid is doing his bit or her bit in this grand scheme of propagation of Islam. So that is the way we need to look at things. Coming back to the opponents, because one of the basic ingredients of Tahrik-e-Jadid was that opposition that actually worked as manure to bring about this, the grand tree that we see today that has flourished and its branches are all over the world. So coming back to the opponents and what they've been doing all their life and talking about all of such things, about Tahrik-e-Jadid, this, Tahrik-e-Jadid is that, every Ahmadi wants to respond to them. But not all of us can. Not all of us would have the means. Not every Ahmadi would have the knowledge even to respond to them. And not every Ahmadi would have the skill to respond to them. Then what do you do in such a situation? Like every Muslim does not have the ability or capability to travel to Palestine to go and help the Muslims there, but they donate towards different charities. They can be, whatever charities, the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, Humanity First, whatever charity they want to come. Because I can't go there physically. So this is my 2 pence. Add it to the reserve that you're creating. And then please just carry on the good work that you're doing in these calamity-stricken, war-torn parts of the world. And this is my contribution. So do we really want the allegations that are being raised against the Ahmadiyya Muslim community to be addressed? Of course we do. Every Ahmadi would. Yep. But is it just about the Ahmadiyya Muslim community? It isn't. We know that every sect has got allegations to make against the other. Yeah. So if our opponents are from, say, the Ahl Hadith, Deobandis have got a lot to say about them as well. They don't even, sometimes take them to be Muslim. Yeah. And if it's a Deobandi opponent of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the Barelvis have got a lot to say about them. So Tahrik-e-Jadid transcends all of such sectarian oppositions. And it wants Islam to prosper in its pure form. And that is what Tahrik-e-Jadid is all about. So every single penny that anyone spends in the way of Tahrik-e-Jadid is part of a grand scheme. So that was how Tahrik-e-Jadid actually came into being. And every single penny that is contributed is actually going towards that new world order that Islam presented to the world, that was revived by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, the founder of the Ahmadiyya community, and presented in the form of a scheme called Tahrik-e-Jadid by Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Raziyallahu anhu.
Okay, I think it's good that you clarified a few points there, because firstly, it's not obligatory, and as you mentioned, it's down to the person whether they want to be part of this blessed scheme, because obviously there will be blessings in it, and we find examples of that as well in the lifetime of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, where so this is, again, it's an answer to those questions where zakat isn't the only incentive. It's not the only form of donations, where the Prophet would ask his followers for donations for a certain campaign.
Absolutely.
And then you had Hazrat Umar come with half of his possessions. You had Hazrat Abu Bakr,
all of his
with both of them, come with all of his possessions.
Yes,
exactly.
And so, that was a voluntary contribution.
Voluntary. And it's also in line with what Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, wanted with his community. He wanted them to be pure before they started contributing. Just like Hazrat Umar and Hazrat Abu Bakr, they were pure before they started contributing.
Absolutely.
So that's good. I mean, that's clarified that it's not obligatory, but anyone who wants good for themselves and for the world would want to take part in this, naturally. So that's fine. And the other point that you mentioned with regards to why it initially began, the manure, the opponents, the Ahrar, for that time, that's well and good. That's how it started. But fast forward to 2025 and generation, what's the newest one? Generation X and generation, all of these new generations, right? Millennials as well. We were born decades after this instigation against the Jamaat. In our lifetimes, we haven't seen the Ahrar movement in that form, as Ahrar. So what is the need, in a way, to continue this scheme now in this day and age?
Wonderful. It's really good you ask that, because I think limiting it to the Ahrar background actually belittles the canvas of the scheme. It's a grand canvas. It's huge. It's massive. It's very, very expansive. So just bringing it down to Ahrar, I think that was just a prototype. Ahrar can be taken as a symbol. So can the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, and so can the Tahrik-e-Jadid in its infancy. I think that was a miniature, which was actually going to get magnified with time.
It was a catalyst in a way.
So in the world that we live in, of all of these generation X and Y and Z and whatever, and wherever we're headed to with all of that, we've run out of alphabets with the generations just keep coming. Has the world become a better place to live in? Technologically speaking, yes. Otherwise, all of the other things that have come hand in hand with all of this apparent luxury or comfort that we see. You've got mental health issues, you've got, the many countries at war, little battles being fought all the time. Third World War, some people say, is lurking, on the horizon, but some say it's already on. So the world actually hasn't become a better place to live in. Has that gulf been bridged between the rich and the poor? It hasn't. It's actually taken an international and an even uglier shape, where powerful nations have become so powerful and where the weak nations have grown even weaker, that we see that it's only gone from bad. So that miniature, like I said, has only magnified many times, manifold. So if any time, this is the time when actually Tahrik-e-Jadid has to be understood in the form or in the shape or against the backdrop of the modern world that we live in, or the postmodern world, I would say, that we live in. This is a time when humankind is actually desperately trying to look for some kind of solution, some kind of peace, some kind of comfort. Because the world and the world that we live in and our life has just become too very fast. It's just beyond understanding. Social media itself, addictions, the definition of addiction has changed. How we've been made addicts of social media, and so many other things. How our thoughts are shaped, how we don't know what to believe in, how we don't know whether we live with the news that we're getting, whether it's real or surreal or unreal or what it is all about.
There's no way to know.
There's absolutely no way to know. And that is where mankind has lost hope, has lost any vision of life. Why even live? What is even the purpose? And that is where today we have to present Islam once again. And that is where Tahrik-e-Jadid, that is why Tahrik-e-Jadid lives on. That is why we hear the terminology like Daftar Awwal, Daftar Doim, Daftar Soim, right? Which is like the first, say, batch, second batch, third batch. So every 19 years, there is a new batch that is introduced, and people can contribute into that. People can still contribute not only on their own behalf, they're given the opportunity. Again, I must say and emphasize, no one is forced. People lovingly, voluntarily, not only contribute themselves, but they contribute for their deceased parents, their deceased grandparents even. I mean, they see a connection with Tahrik with such a grand scheme that, when it was launched and during that Friday sermon, my grandfather used to tell me, I was sitting right there in front of Muslim Out or my grandmother used to tell me that when as Muslim Out launched Tahrik-e-Jadid, I remember we were in wherever, Kerala or wherever, and we received the Al-Fazl with the Friday sermon, and we read that Huzur had launched such a grand scheme. So, in the loving memory of my grandmother, in the loving memory of my grandfather, in the loving memory of my father, of my mother, I contribute on their behalf. That is the spirit of Ahmadis. It's just that we need to understand. We need to understand the ideology, the thought behind it. And what actually is it? It should not be belittled at any time. Because you see, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, Amirul Mu'mineen, he launches the new year of Tahrik-e-Jadid, of this grand scheme, every year. And even why is that what could seem like a worldly competition, that such and such country has contributed the most, such and such country has contributed, is second in contributing the most, such and such is third. Why even that? It's not. It's something that actually represents the sentiment, the feeling of the individuals that contribute towards it, because they want to see that where they are, Tahrik-e-Jadid lives on. And that is why, as an incentive, there, these countries are told, this country was first, and this was second, and this was third in their contribution, and so on and so forth. So yeah, Tahrik-e-Jadid, when it started, the world wasn't a very good place. Now where we are, the world is even a worse place to live in. It's just gone from bad to worse.
Yeah.
So the solution has to be even more, equally forceful. And that is where we need to see that we all need to understand and then contribute towards the grand scheme of Tahrik-e-Jadid.
I think it's important that you highlighted that point, that it's not about who came first, who came second in their contributions, who made a larger contribution, because it's not comparable to a worldly charity or organization where if a donor, he contributes, say, £1 billion, then the entire building there's a plaque with his name on it, and the building is named after him, or the hall is named after that person, or whatever. That's not the point here.
It isn't, not at all.
It's not about getting
Of
credit
course.
for your...
Yeah.
There's a grander scheme.
There is a grander scheme, absolutely.
Yeah. But let's come towards what happens after we've given that money. Let's talk about some transparency aspects.
Yeah.
The money has been handed over to the community, to the Jamaat, to the system. Within that system, the Jamaat obviously works within a framework called the Nizam, the administrative system. What is done to that money? Where does it go? How is it handled?
Right. You see, again, we go back to Qadian and the streets of Qadian and the little mosque where this grand scheme was launched, where the Ahmadiyya community was being threatened that you, who in the name of Islam want to do something, we will not let you do anything. And they had their own set of allegations that they had. Ahmadis are not Muslims, so don't listen to what they have to say, don't follow them, don't join them. They aren't Muslims at all. Now, there are two ways of replying to an allegation. One is a verbal way, which the founder, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin, he very clearly stated that isn't the only purpose of Tahrik-e-Jadid, that we're going to train missionaries and we're going to send them out to clarify and to give answers to the allegations. And then there is a practical way of replying to certain things. We will raise Qadian off the face of the earth. Will you really? All right, give it a go. But in the meantime, we're going to build a mosque in London.
Yeah.
Are you going to take these minarets down? All right, let's see. Give it a go. In the meantime, we're going to have another mosque in Chicago. And we're going to have another one in Mauritius. And we're going to have another one in Japan. And we're going to have another one in North India. And we're going to have another one in Africa. And we're going to have another one in Ghana. All over the world.
Yeah.
So that is what Tahrik-e-Jadid is. Tahrik-e-Jadid is a practical reply to our opponents. Those who say they're not Muslims, go on then. Make this many mosques. Can you do that? They come back to us telling us, oh, you're not in millions. You're only a few 100,000. Okay, then the funds that come into Tahrik-e-Jadid, where does all that come from? Is it only a few thousand, a few 100,000 that can contribute this much that you're able to not only build mosques, but maintain them all around the world?
Yeah.
So here we are, Tahrik-e-Jadid, Zindabad. We were able to give practical replies to our opponents. We still are doing that. And that is what Tahrik-e-Jadid does. Not only build them, keep them functional. Have missionaries there so that people can go and talk to them. So that they can give the message of Islam to the neighborhoods and the townships that those mosques are built in. Mission houses, libraries, free literature.
Caretakers.
Caretakers, of course.
It's always sad to see a mosque in a derelict situation where no one's taking care of it.
Literature.
What's the point of building it if you're not
Absolutely.
going to maintain it?
So the mosque becomes a hub. You have literature there. Literature is distributed. You have people coming there, being invited. Missionaries going out in the local townships or local areas and doing all sorts of events. So in a nutshell, this is what Tahrik-e-Jadid is all. It's a practical example given to the opponents who said, and we're talking how many years on now? Almost 90 years on. Right? So 90 years on, here we are. Qadian is still there. It is still our, Markaz. That is where we belong spiritually. That is where Ahmadiyya, the revival of Islam, actually happened. But in every single part of the world, by the grace of Allah, the Ahmadiyya community has built mosques. So every time we build a mosque, every time a foundation stone is laid, every time a building of a mosque is erected on that, every single brick that goes into that mosque is a practical reply to the opponents who say Ahmadiyyat is not Islam. Well, then what is Islam? Who else is doing that? We need to know. We really would want to know. Yes, there are individual efforts. Some people coming together saying, oh, we're raising funds, we're going to build a mosque, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So a community, maybe a little one, can build a mosque maybe in its lifetime or a generation in its lifetime. But in growing up, especially in the last 22 years, there's been such a large number of mosques that have been built everywhere. And I like to say that, I was in Germany once, and I was traveling from Bonn to Frankfurt. And I was accompanied by a missionary who is posted in Germany, Shamshad Kamarsa, principal of Germany. So he was with me, and we were on the motorway. And he said, it's almost time for Asr now, the Asr Salat. If we want to say it in here, we can do that. Otherwise, the next exit, Ausfahrt of the Autobahn, we can have such and such mosque. The next one, we have such and such mosque. And then the next exit can be this. And the next exit can be this. And the next exit can be this. And if we want to do it in Frankfurt, we're going to be very near to Masjid Noor. But if you want to go to Beth Subu, it isn't far from Beth Noor, Masjid Noor. That's just one country, just one example. That is Tahrik-e-Jadid. That is what we contribute towards. That is where we wish we could do more. And we should wish that we can do more.